All right, everybody, welcome to After Further Review with your host, Alex Hale. We got a very special show for you guys. I'm not at home like I normally am. Sorry, I'm not in front of the big TV with the PS4 playing in front of me with MLB The Show probably on. Instead of playing the show and probably running the Indians, I'm at Progressive Field in their executive offices with my good friend Curtis Danburg with me. Curtis, how are you?
I'm doing great. Great to have you here.
So let's first off start with the most obvious question. What the heck is going on?
With what?
The Indians. What happened?
Well, the good news is we got out of the month of April.
Yeah.
We had a much better May, and June's been progressing. I think we have, since the beginning of May, one of the fourth best records in the American League. So that's a good sign. We've caught up some ground. We've got a long way to go. We need to get to that 500 mark is the key. And sitting here today, we're 3 games below, and I think 7.5 out. So we've got some work to do, but exciting things are ahead. We're hitting the heat of the summer, and
Yep.
Certainly excited to have the left side of the infield have a new look.
Yes, I was going to mention that. With the Cavs season, unfortunately, being done, great job, guys. Great fight.
It was a good run.
It was. We'll get them next year. I'm not going to go into any details. We're just going to leave it at that. But anyways, this is a perfect time to come down to the stadium. First off, the new right field, by the way, absolutely love it. Haven't been able to experience it, but I've heard a lot of good things and everything you're offering over there. I know I'd love it. I mean, I don't even need to experience it to know. I know right now without even experiencing it. Because I'm hearing it's like selling out. That right field stuff is selling out.
So again, one thing just to clarify is that we are selling our district ticket special, so that's $13. You get access to the ballpark. So just because we're selling on that ticket doesn't mean we're selling out the ability to go and be a part of the bar, the corner experience, and all the drink rails and things like that. You could sit by no plate or in a suite and still go out there. But you're right, it's been hopping.
Yeah.
A little anecdote I can share with you is we've already exceeded sales in the corner through like 25 games compared to all of last year for the full season in the Batter's Eye Bar in center field.
That is great.
It's definitely caught fire, and people are having a lot of fun.
Well, it's going to pick up more because, as you said, the left side of the infield has a brand new look. Now, for those of you who know this show, you know that I know certain people here, and I hinted last year, and now that he's up and everything, I can reveal the source. It came from the man himself, but still not naming names, just the man himself, saying that Lindor's going to take time to come up. They're not going to rush him, and he stayed true to the word. You guys did not rush him up, and so far, after a couple games, it looks like he's adjusting pretty well. But again, it's early. But you got to admit, bringing a lot of excitement now to the ballpark with a brand new shortstop and Giovanni Urshela, a guy who I'm pretty high on.
It's taken a lot of patience, to hold out for that. We've seen, Francisco from day one has shown just kind of the maturity of a professional, and seeing him grow up already, leaps and bounds. He's been the youngest player at every level along the way, and to hold him back, and but our research and everything we've seen, this is hopefully the right progression. Now it's not a perfect science, but we feel he's ready both offensively and defensively, and the goal all along was that once he's here to stay. We don't want to be shuttling him back and forth. So we hope that's the case and bring a little spark. And I think there's no question you bring that type of energy, and you saw that in his debut.
Yeah.
Falling over. It's infectious. It's infectious.
It is.
And I think it's good for the clubhouse. And as I've been saying too, you go back to 2007, we brought a young kid up out of nowhere in Asdrubal Cabrera, and he helped lead us to the postseason. So you never know how it could play out, but we're excited to have Frankie on board.
I have been waiting for this for a long time, but unlike most fans who started the free Lindor movement, I think you guys have sort of rubbed off on me going like, you want to know what? We've learned our lesson in the past because, a lot of people don't understand with the whole free Lindor movement. The Indians know this experience, and I'll just say this for probably Mark Shapiro's sake. We keep forgetting the Brandon Phillips situation. We rushed it along, didn't work out. You didn't rush Johnny Peralta, and look who turned out to be the better fit in the end. It was Peralta when everybody said Phelps is the better player. So I want to commend the Indians for not giving in to what the fans wanted. And I know it's a hard thing for the Indians fans to understand, but I want to assure the fans, in my perspective, in knowing this game, it's going to help leaps and bounds for Lindor. And it doesn't help to have his best friend, basically, right next to him at third base. What do you know about Giovanni Urshela?
Yeah, not a ton. I mean, I've gotten to know him in spring training a little bit, and he's only been up here for a very short time, but certainly has a lot of power potential. Has a lot of from a defensive standpoint, elite caliber defender. So hopefully, having that speed, having that range on the left side of the infield will help the pitchers and help solidify the ultimate defense for the team.
Well, I have told Mark this comparison, and now I'm going to tell you this comparison. Travis Fryman. I
For Shaw,
see I see a lot of Fryman in Giovanni Urshela. I don't know why I see it. I've seen him play at Akron for over a year. That's all I see. He will never blow you away with power. He'll hit solid average, but he plays great D. And that's the one part of Fryman's game people keep forgetting.
I'd
He
sign up
was
for Travis Fryman.
everybody would. Everybody loved him here. So with that said, let's get away from that left side infield. I know there's a lot of excitement there, but I think the other part of this season that's been pretty exciting has been the pitching. You know, now one guy who people, if you've been listening to this show at all, you know one thing. I've been high on Trevor Bauer. He does have his ups and downs, but he has really come a long way this year alone. I mean, what have you seen from at least someone like a Bauer, like after watching Carrasco erupt last year and Kluber?
Well, his development's been incredible, and I think you have to tip your cap to Trevor. I mean, there's nobody that works harder that, whether it's off season and the process he goes through to get himself ready. We asked a lot of him to change a lot of things,
Yep.
change a lot of his approach, and he took it to heart, and he's taken it to a whole different level. And it's fun for us to see that come out with success.
Mm-hmm.
So to see him and his pitching performance against the Cubs again, another
Dominant.
great example of, and he didn't blow people away with strikeouts. I mean, he had 7 Ks, but he's pitching and using his different mix and things like that. So it's been fun to see his development. Yeah, at the end of the day, we've got the pitching that can get us. We need to get consistent. We need consistent, obviously, in the lineup and the bat. And the bullpens come around too. Rocky start to the season, but everybody seems to be settling down into their roles, and so that's a good sign for things yet to come.
Yeah, Brian Shaw, don't let me down. I've always had high hopes for you, and this early season, I still have to fight for that guy. He sort of, that's been a little bit of a confusing thing, and I'm going to ask the question to you. Do you think maybe Francona maybe overuses the bullpen to the point where maybe in time they are starting to wear down, or is it something else?
Yeah, it's hard to put your finger on it. I mean, there's what we've seen with Brian. He's a guy that needs to work a lot. When he sits over time, is kind of his pitch selection and approach, it deteriorates over time. So I'm not going to criticize Tito. I mean, Tito
No,
has a good handle for the bullpen, but the reality
that's
is,
my job to criticize
yeah,
Tito.
the reality is that he was in 80 games last year, so there was a
Yeah.
lot of. So you're going to have a little bit of some ease into the season coming off that, but getting in the groove now, which is the key, and all those guys are stepping up, whether it's Zepp and Cody Allen, and we've got a lot of young arms too that have popped up, and Nick
Mm-hmm.
Haganon has shown some great promise and starting to show a little bit more consistency along the way too.
I have not given up on Haganon. A lot of people have. I'm one of the few who has not given up on that kid.
Too much talent.
Too much talent, and was one of those centerpieces in that Victor Martinez trade. Oh boy, don't even remind me of the Victor Martinez trade. Speaking of former Indians who just so happen to be in division, let's talk about that division. I'm going to ask you this first question. What do you think of this all-star voting right now with the Royals?
I'll tell you what, it's fascinating right now. You sit there and you look and you see Salvador Perez leading the American League in voting, and it makes you scratch your head. So,
Omar Infante.
Omar, I know.
How is Omar I don't.
Yeah,
Continue.
something will come up. I mean, something seems to be off. in that regard. So it'll be interesting in the next few weeks how things play out. I mean, Omar Infante is the easiest one you can point to. I mean,
Yeah.
Jason Kipnis is leading every category among second
Yeah.
basemen. He will be an
I
all
saw that on
star.
Twitter. Yeah.
He will be an all star. The question is how he's not going to catch up to Omar and even Altuve that
Mhm.
almost have double the votes.
Yeah.
But I see definitely the coaches and players voting Jason in,
Oh yeah.
and hopefully we can get a guy if Trevor keeps pitching the way. Maybe he's the guy in the final vote, and Michael Brantley
Brantley should
is
be.
right up there, and certainly is known now and certainly made his claim to being one of the elite players in the league. So he'll be in Ohio, so we
Yeah,
want to
I
get
know.
as
I know.
many.
I know.
We want to get as many Indians into that All Star game
Yeah,
down in Cincy.
definitely. I'm just gonna say, so you don't need to respond to this joke. It's just a recent development story joke. Royals hacked the system. You didn't have to respond to that at all, and we're not gonna say you did or you didn't. If you guys, we'll talk about that another day about what's going on in baseball with that whole thing, mind blowing. What's going on there
In St. Louis, yeah.
Well, you didn't have to say where
Yeah.
it was. We could have left that silent, but I guess a lot of people know what's going on anyways. We're not dumb. Anyways, uh, with this division, I think the biggest surprise has been Minnesota. Now, again, let's go back to that first meeting with Mark Shapiro. I said, your window is about 2-3 years because that's when all those Minnesota guys are going to come up. And if they're all for real, it's going to be tough. As of this weekend, Byron Buxton now up. I guess they are looking for a spark.
Yep.
And the Twins are just playing very good baseball. I think something no one predicted. And on top of it all, you have the Royals, the Tigers, and a much better Chicago team. How hard is this division, you think?
It's the hardest in baseball. I mean, the reality is that, and facts are facts, that AL Central is the toughest division in all of baseball. So it doesn't make it any easier. It means you need to be on your game, and we have a lot of work. But the good news is because our division is what it is that we'll face them a lot. There's going to be a lot of opportunity to catch up. We need to get the Tigers number. They certainly have ours early this season.
Don't get me started.
I know.
My hate on that.
I know. But you're right. Minnesota, Chicago's gotten off to a rough start, but they still have talent.
Mhm.
So we'll see how it plays out. Paul Molitor's done a phenomenal job with
yeah.
Twins, and but there's still a lot of season left to be played.
Yep. All right, so we talked a little bit about the season, so we're going to take a small break here. When we come back, we're going to be talking about what's going on here at the stadium. There's a new exhibit that I want people to understand more about, and I'm going to tell a little story about one of the artifacts here from the man who the exhibit is dedicated to because it comes from his mouth. I'll tell you about when we return more after further review right after this. All right, we're back with more after further review with your host Alex Hill, and join me, Curtis Danburg from the Cleveland Indians. And again, we're not in the house; we are here in Progressive Field. So thank you for inviting me down here. All right. So as I was hinting, there is a new exhibit, I believe, out in right field. I believe
Left field.
Left field. Okay, left field.
In the Terrace Club.
Oh, Terrace Club.
Yep.
Oh, okay.
We're gonna go visit it after we speak here.
Perfect. The Bob Feller exhibit. Now, for those of you who don't know, I do have a small connection with Bob Feller. I met him at the Hall of Fame. I met him 3 times, really, and he actually remembered me from the first time we met at the Hall of Fame, which was amazing. Spent 15 minutes with the guy in the hall, took a photo in front of his plaque. I don't think many fans can say in their lifetime they met Bob Feller at the Hall of Fame, spent 15 minutes walking around and just talking baseball and then getting a photo at the plaque. So this museum, I admit, means a lot to me because what Austin Carr is to the Cavs, Bob Feller is to the Indians. He was Mr. Indian himself. There's no question about it. And now we have a whole new exhibit. You have quite a few artifacts. Now, other than the one that I'm going to talk about, what all is there at the Bob Feller exhibit when you go down there?
Yeah, so just taking a step back, Bob grew up in Iowa, Van Meter, Iowa, and he built years ago a museum
Yep.
Right there in the heart of Van Meter. Very small
Yep.
town, but it was probably one of the nicest buildings in all of Van Meter. Brick building, had this really cool brick mural on the outside. So all his artifacts that he had over his life that he had in that museum. When he passed away, part of the process in his will was the Indians to get the items. And Bob DiBiasio and our curator Jeremy Fedor drove down in December, picked up all the items in a U-Haul, brought it up here, and had this vision of creating this exhibit in the Terrace Club. So the Terrace Club again now is open to the public.
Yeah.
So you can go up there and visit anytime you want. If you want to get a reservation there, you go to opentable.com. So you're not limited. It's free to open to the public. You have to go check this out. So, the exhibit features items such as his naval uniform, his contract that is written almost like on a napkin that says he'd be a member of the Indians for $1. His glove, his father's catcher's mitt that he used to catch Bob in the famous barn at their farm. No hitter jersey, no hitter glove, and then the item that you're referencing, probably the coolest piece of the entire collection.
It is.
We have featured in there, and I'll let you
Yeah.
kind of shed the light on that.
So there's a bat, ladies and gentlemen, that I think every fan, if you are a true fan of this game, there is one reason to go to that exhibit, and it's to see that bat. As Bob told me the story, and this was at the Hall of Fame, and he was telling me about the bat. That bat was randomly picked out by Babe Ruth in his last visit to Yankee Stadium, in that famous picture where he's using the bat as the crutch. Now, again, I want people to understand, it could have been any bat. Now, back then, I know some people who don't understand the game as much are saying, wait a minute, Bob Feller had a bat? Yes, in the 1940s, there was no DH. I don't think that was until like the 70s we came up with the DH. He had his own bat, and Babe Ruth grabbed his bat and used it. Now, if Babe Ruth probably had known it was Bob's bat, now Bob didn't say this. This is my assumption from what Bob has told me about Babe. I think Babe would have had more reason to grab it because there was a mutual respect between the two. And Bob admitted to me, one of the batters he always wanted to face was Babe Ruth. He always wanted to face him. And he never did. And it was a darn shame. But, the thing about that bat, and, it's sort of going to be an emotional thing for me to see. And I want people to understand why it is. Because if you were listening back, let's say a month ago at a certain place when I was doing my show, I saw the photo of it. When I was there, Bob said, I want you to come to Van Meter. He knew I was a real fan. He knew I loved this game. And he knew I played it not because I wanted to become rich and famous. He knew I played it because I loved the game. It was for no other reason. I was like a Ken Griffey Jr. Ken Griffey Jr. did not play it for the money. He played it for the love of the game. And so many others did. Jim Tomey, so many others. But, just to name the kid. But he said to me, if you get to Van Meter, come to the museum. If you come to the museum and I am there, trust me, I will remember this. That's the kind of person he was.
Yep.
And he says, I will let you hold it. Which I said, well, I'm never getting to Van Meter probably. And it was sort of heartbreaking. But, when I see it, I know he's just going to be smiling. Because he's going to be like, he understands it. He appreciates it. And he will make sure the memory lives on. Because that bat is probably, in my opinion, one of the top 5 most precious artifacts of this game. Because not only did the bat belong to Bob Feller, but that iconic photo, probably the last bat Babe Ruth ever held. Now, we don't know this for a fact, but there's a chance it was. That tells you right there, it is probably one of the most precious artifacts in this game's history. And that every fan should appreciate.
And it's right here at Progressive Field, which is pretty cool.
See, I'm gonna tell you one thing. I don't care how much tickets are. Just to see that's worth price of admission.
Yeah.
And I will bring friends. When I have kids, I will bring them here. And I swear, on this show right now, that memory will live forever. That is one of the most precious artifacts I know in this game, and it's not just because I love this game, it's because Bob was my friend. And I miss him, and I wish he could have been here during, the 2013 season when we were so close. I think he would have loved every second of it. And, I wish he could have seen at least Kluber pitch.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
he is technical.
The cool story about, the night we opened the exhibit, we had Ann Feller, Bob's widow, his two sons, Bruce and Steve, here on site to open the exhibit. That was the night Kluber tied Bob Feller's single game record for 18 strikeouts.
Right.
You know that there was some bigger spirits and bigger forces working that night.
You want to know what? I remember. Because I was eating and I was hearing about that, and I'm looking at my dad at dinner. I said, you need to look up right now because he's here. Like, I sense it. And I'm texting with a Cardinals fan because we're playing the Cardinals that night. I'm like, he better be coming out for the ninth. He's getting 21. He's going for 21. And he's like, there's no way. There's no way he's doing this to my Cardinals. And when Cody Allen came in, I'm like, you want to know what? That's fine. But the one thing that ran through my mind that I sort of was mad about, and I could bet Bob was a little disappointed in, Bob never believed in the pitch count. He never did. Yeah. If you have the hot hand, you have the hot hand. You don't take it out of his hand.
Bob believed in the pitch count that night because he didn't want his record to fall.
I know. I think he had mixed feelings about it. Let's just say he had mixed feelings.
Yeah. I'll tell you though, most fascinating individual you'll ever meet. From being a true patriot to all his success on the field, it's certainly an incredible individual. And to the day he passed on, he always had his mind and could recount what he did and what the pitch count was in 1945 on a gray day in the Cleveland Stadium. So just amazing person. And the other cool thing we have that you'll see in the exhibit is a video wall where you can watch different little video vignettes. And my favorite one is the one which I think is just fascinating, is when they timed him against the motorcycle. To see him in he had a suit on, but he took the jacket on, but still wearing a tie.
Yeah.
And he's throwing a fastball up against a motorcycle.
That was crazy. And the one thing I will tell people that Bob Feller taught me, and it goes back to him being a true patriot, he was the first man that ever taught me the real heroes of World War II are the ones who didn't come back.
Yes.
I am no hero.
Yep.
The ones who are heroes are the ones who came back. And I never really thought of that. And with all wars, I never thought of that. And he really was not just a fascinating person, but he was probably one of the wisest people you will ever meet.
Absolutely.
So
that line does resonate.
Yes, it does. And I'm very glad that we have these great artifacts. I'm glad that I know the museum shut down in Van Meer. I know they have something left. They have something left over.
They kept a few items there, and it's turned into their city hall.
Yeah, I read that.
So
I'm glad they at least have a few things still in Van Meter for him. But I'm glad the Indians were able to get a hold of probably some of the more precious ones, because I know that's what he would have wanted. He wanted the Indians fans to celebrate. I know he may have wanted it in the hall, but he knew where it belonged. Yep. So with that said, we got a very special thing we also have to talk about coming up this weekend. Boy, it's going to be a lot of fun. Bringing back a blast from the past. I mean, we're going back 20 years. It really has been 20 years.
I know.
I can probably tell you what happened. Well, maybe not exactly this day, but we've passed. It was 20 years ago and 12 days that a great comeback happened. Do you know which one it is? And I can tell you which number it is on Wahoo Would Have Finished, too.
Wow.
I can tell you the correct order, probably.
You said 12 days?
20 years, 12 days, June 5th.
I'm going to say that was Manny Ramirez?
That was July 16th.
Okay.
I'll tell you which one.
So it's either Manny or the Lee Smith Grand Slam?
That was July 18th. I was there.
Okay.
That was my first game.
Oh,
I'll
Paul
tell you-
Sereno, but Paul Sereno, that happened in May, didn't it? Against Toronto,
I think that was June 5th,
was it?
1995.
I'm
Yep.
not gonna doubt you.
I am 95% sure, which that is number 3 on Wahoo What a Finish.
Nice.
I will try to correctly name 12 through 1 when
The
we
walk-offs?
return.
I love
Yes,
it.
because I've watched it so many times, and honestly, folks, I will say this right now, I haven't watched it in about 8 months. I probably will today, but I'm going to try to name every single one correct, and we will check our answers later today. I will email you and tell you if I'm correct. So we're not even going to
I
check.
won't doubt you, Alex.
I feel confident. I've gone over a couple times, so
Mhm.
we'll talk about that when we return. More after for review right after this. All right, we are back, and we are here with Chris Danburg here at beautiful Progressive Field in our offices here. So here we go. We're gonna try and name them 12 through 1. We're getting right to the point. Number 12, that would be the Kansas City game. Manny Ramirez base hit, Carlos Baerga scores. Number 11 was Manny Ramirez against Boston, people forget. Number 10 is where it gets a little tricky. That either was Tomey's home run against Detroit or the Twins. I'm going to go on a limb and say that may have been, I'm trying to remember, because I can sort of, and here's the scary thing, I sort of know the music to it in the back of my head and how it all meshes in together. So I think number 10 is Tomey versus Detroit. If it's not that, then it's the Minnesota game. It's one of those two, and then the other is next. Number 8, Lee Smith. No, not Lee Smith. That was important. My bad. Jose Mesas. Number 7 was Sandy, home run, with the amazing story behind it about how the kid called it. Number 6, Albert Bell, homer number 1 against Toronto. Number 5, Bell, homer number 2 versus Toronto. Number 4, Eddie Murray walk-off. Number 3, Sereno. Number 2, Manny. Number 1, Bell.
Nice.
Yeah. I love this team, and we are doing the Indians are doing a very special event, a very special weekend.
Yes.
Let's be honest. A very special weekend commemorating probably, arguably, the greatest baseball team to ever play the game. Period. I don't care if they won the title. I know the truth. We know the truth. I mean, ask Kenny. He knows the truth. Ask Carlos. He knows the truth. The games are on YouTube. I've watched them. I'll just say this. Boy, you gave that greatest pitching staff ever a lot of leeway. But anyways, tell us what's going on this weekend.
So yeah, that team won 100 games and 100 wins and 144 games. So
Yep.
pretty impressive feat. So we'll be honoring that team, bringing back 13 of the members: Mike Hargrove, Sandy Alomar, Jim Thome, Lofton, Baerga, Charles Nagy, Dennis Martinez, Asamacher, Plunk, Julian Tavares, Herbert Perry. So phenomenal, great.
Should I bring all 7 Jim Thome autographs I have and just show my stuff?
There you go. Still working on Manny. Albert isn't going to be able to make it.
Wait, there's a chance.
There's a chance Manny Ramirez. There's a chance.
Okay, we're not saying this is happening, but it's not off the table.
He hasn't said no.
Wow, I thought there was a better chance of Bell.
We got Theo Epstein to sign off because he's working for the Cubs. So.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So we'll see. If he's traveling with the team, the hope was that he would just stay on through the weekend. So we'll see. But anyway, Friday night and Saturday pregame, we'll have a special pregame ceremony, bringing all the guys through and announcing them. We're going to do a flag raising postgame on Friday night. Saturday is the unique event you kind of inferred about. From 2 to 5 at the Connor Palace Theater, Plow Square. We're going to relive all the 95 memories watching Wahoo Won a Finish. It's $30. You can go to Indians.com/1995. All the proceeds go to Cleveland Indians Charities. We're going to watch the entire video and then have all 13 guys up on the stage reminiscing and recounting those stories for about an hour. Tom Hamilton is the MC.
That is absolutely amazing. And I'm just going to say a few things about the 95 team. I went to 3 games. July 18th against the Angels, and that was the Lee Smith Grand Slam game, number 1 on that list.
Yep.
Which I swear to God, I am that kid that's being raised up by his father in that video. I don't know. I think it is. Though there could have been more than one kid who was being raised up like that. So there's a chance. But then again, I just don't see many kids crying, put me down, put me down. So I assume it's me. But anyways, but I was also there for Albert Bell's 50th home run, which was the second last game of the year. And then my parents surprised me that day and said, "Hey, we're going to the last game of the year."
Nice.
So I was there for win number 100. I still remember the look. I sat from behind home plate. I remember that last out. That's my only memory of that game for some reason. I mean, it was 17-6, the final score, which that's a long game for anybody. Yeah. So I was probably a little bit worn out, and I probably just don't remember all the runs being scored. But I do remember that final out and seeing that 100 up there for the 100 wins, and it was just such an unreal team on all accounts. I mean, a lot of people don't realize this. It wasn't just their hitting. They had, I think, the best pitching staff in the American League by numbers. I mean, their pitching rotation was great, led by Martinez, who was an all-star, Hershiser, Nagy, Mark Clark, Ken Hill. Ken Hill was later in the year, though. But they were so deep, and they were so good. And their bullpen, I mean, don't even get me started. I mean, you have guys like, people forget Alan Embry.
Yeah.
And people forget Alan Embry was part of that staff with Osemacher, Plunk, Tavares, Mesa. Again, OJ was probably, I think, was up here a couple times for a while.
And he's coming.
He is? Awesome. So the true 1997 World Series MVP is going to be here. All right, not you, Levon Hernandez, and Chad OJ. Anyways, that's he can thank Jose that night. We can all ask him. So how do you feel about Jose blowing your MVP? No, we'll never ask that. We've moved past it. But anyways, it was just a unique team because it captivated a city that was going through a rough time. Because at the time this is all going down in our playoff run, the Browns are moving.
Right.
And this team, through all the adversity, they just kept fighting and fighting. I mean, I don't remember how many comeback from behind wins. I think they had like 14 or 15. They hadn't lost an extra innings game until game 3 of the ALCS when Buhner hit the home run. That was their first extra innings loss. I think it was their only one. That shows you the amazing fight that team had, and you just look at all the players. I mean, the guy who caught the last out of that 100-win game, Brian Giles. Mm-hmm. Brian Giles was on the 40-man roster. That is just ridiculous on how, I think even, I'm not 100% sure on this. I think, if I remember correctly, in the celebration, Sean Casey was part of that celebration, I think. Not 100% sure.
It might have been before his time.
It was around there. There. I thought I saw Sean Casey. Maybe not. I can double check tonight. But you can just think of all the guys that were in that minor league system. And it changed everything. It really did. I mean, they come up with the blueprint for success, which was build the new stadium, lock up long-term to guys who are young, which is the first of its kind, has been taken on by everybody now. Yeah. You see our GM back then doing it now for the Braves and John Hart, and I gotta say, some questionable stuff, but you want to know what? I think he's on the right track there.
Yeah.
He's still got it. And then we go back to who we had in this front office. People don't know how deep we were. Mark was here. John was running everything. Dan O'Dowd, I believe, was even part of this.
Dan O'Dowd was, he was the assistant GM.
Those are 3 GMs.
Yep.
And we're not talking average GMs. We're talking about good to great.
Yep.
That is just ridiculous how deep all the way around this organization was.
Well, you had 2. You had Paul TePodesta, who ended up being a GM. Josh Burns.
Yep.
Was at the time a GM for a couple different teams, Arizona and San Diego. So, it was just a phenomenal run. And it'll be fun this weekend to celebrate that, and I think too, just in time for our current team to
Yeah,
fire up. We haven't had a walk off win,
Yeah.
so maybe we'll get our first one this weekend.
yeah, maybe we will. And I can say this because I'm a '95 fan. I wish he could be a part of it, but I know why he's not here. God, I wish Omar could be a part of it.
I know.
I still cannot understand why he took the Tigers job, but you want to know what? I still love you, Omar. Still do. But I thought it was somewhat fitting. I'll just say this, going back to Lindor, it was fitting. His first game, his first at bat, his first hit was in front of Omar.
Yep.
And he's wearing 12, which is reminiscent for Robbie, his favorite player, and only one number short of Omar Vizquel. And I can tell you, this team here right now with all the young guys, I think those players right now need to hear what this 95 team went through. And not just in 95, but even the guys who stay along through 96, 97, who were all here for that run.
Yep.
It was such an amazing time for this city, for its fans, that I think the players need to truly realize, and this is not a knock on them, maybe they're just not used to it, but it just seems to me whenever we have a sellout, I don't know if they clam up, if they're not ready for it. It's just my opinion. So I'm not knocking on them. It's just somewhat like I'm a little worried on that, but I really think the 95 team could teach this team embrace those moments, because my general perception is I think they know how to play, they're just not embracing that moment.
They're learning.
They're learning. They
They're
are.
learning.
They're
It's a
getting there.
process. Yep.
Obviously it is, and that's why I think the 95 team is coming at the perfect time. We're right now slowly climbing our way back up, and we're fighting.
Yep.
And at the same time, this team needs veteran guidance, pointing them in the right direction of like, this is how you do it. This is how you do it. And the 95 team tells you.
And that was the song of the year.
Which one?
This is how we do it.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Played that in the clubhouse after every win.
Okay, I'll give you this trivia question. What song did they play to honor Steve and Cruz?
Garth Brooks.
The dance.
The dance. And you'll hear that song on Friday night.
That's going to be a little
Yeah.
tear-jerking because,
Yep.
It is sad that happened, and, I know their spirits were there
Yep.
in 95, 96, and so on. And, and I think it was Mike's Hargrove's request
Yeah.
to,
Yep.
And I would say that's probably one of the greatest gestures any manager's ever given. He
Yeah.
didn't have to do it, but he wanted everybody to know they were a part of this team as much as anybody else. And I think, these guys here right now can learn so much. Just so much from this team and become not just a good team, but a championship caliber team. They have that potential.
Yep.
It's all sitting right in front of them. And every time I watch them, I say to myself one thing: embrace the moment. Don't be afraid. Just embrace it. Once you embrace that moment, you're good.
Yep.
You'll know how to do it again and again and again. And I think a lot of them are slowly getting it. Kipnis is getting it. Brantley's got it, obviously. I think Moss is starting to get it back, and the pitchers, for the most part, get it. But I think other guys, Gomes, I think, is slowly learning. Santana, I think, is still learning, but I think he's getting there. He's getting better. And I think Giovanni and Lindor, the kind of players they are going to get it pretty quick. They are not afraid of the moment.
Yep.
I've seen it at Akron. I've heard about it in AAA. I don't see why they can't do it here. And that's the key for this team. Embrace the moment. Because great teams do not come around very often. Great pitching staffs are very rare to find. You have them right here. Embrace it.
Yep.
Doesn't happen very often. So before we go, we got to end with one last thing. we're going to do a sort of like a little bit of a brief overview of this because I know you're not the person to talk to about it. But first off, the draft. Excellent job. I know before we came on air, we really talked about that really quickly. I'm just going to make a funny joke here. I think I'm rubbing off on you guys finally. I swear I was sitting in my living room watching the draft. I know I'm a nerd like that. And you guys are on the clock, and I'm yelling, take Brady Aiken. Just thank the first 16 teams for being idiots. Take them. Thank you. We've got our next ace. If everything turns out well, take the risk. And I was sold the Indians were not doing it. I thought they were going somewhere else. I was just sure of it. And then I hear the Cleveland Indians select Brady Aiken. I have not been more excited for a draft pick since Wiggins last year and Kyrie. That's how excited I was for this pick. And for people who don't know, Brady Aiken was the first pick last year. Now he's coming off of Tommy John surgery, but the kid has ace potential. No doubt about it. I mean, I've scouted him and I just see it written all over. And the fact the Indians were able to scoop him up, and then the next two picks. I mean, I'm seeing actual writers say this. Just like last year, Indians killing the draft. And in previous years, I mean, no offense, I mean, we can probably sit here and admit, drafting wasn't that great, let's say, 6-7 years ago. And something has changed. I don't know what it is, don't know how, but it just has. And the point I'm trying to make is, I want fans to understand, even just from your, because I know you're not involved in it as much, if at all, the draft does not work the same way as the NBA and NFL. It doesn't. And I want you to at least confirm this with me. Signability is probably one of the number one issues in this whole process. You need a guy that is going to sign at your cost. Because we now have, I believe, for the first 10 rounds, I believe we have somewhat of a number we have to...
Correct.
Yeah.
You have like an allowance.
Yeah, you have an allowance. And I believe whatever you don't spend, does it go over the next year possibly? No, it doesn't?
No.
Okay, I just want to make sure. I didn't read that far into it. But you have to get guys that sign on your, how much you want to pay. And that eliminates some of the top guys on the board. I'll give one example of this draft. Daz Cameron, Mike Cameron's son, top 10 talent. Now, if this is the NBA or NFL draft, yeah, he's a top 10 pick. But in baseball, top 10 picks are not top 10 picks. He was asking for unreal amounts of money to be drafted. And teams are like, well, we don't have the money to sign that. We're using a lot of our allowance, so we can't draft him. And that's something I just want at least to get out there for Indians fans. The Indians are doing what they need to do. It's just more the fact that there is a lot more that goes into this than just drafting the best player at a need position. I mean, I don't care. Right-handed power bat. Oh, he's a right-handed power bat. If he's going to cost you $7 million to sign when you have $10 million in allowance and you have about 10 more picks to make, no, you don't do that. You go like, we have other needs. We can get other good players here, and here. And teams actually take advantage by signing guys who will sign for less early to get those guys that actually slip. I mean, we saw, let's see, I'm trying to think of a couple of others. I mean, Funkhauser sort of hurt himself, but, he sort of slipped and he went to the Dodgers, which good job for them again. I can't say enough about them. But so many others. I mean, I think other years you had a couple of other names that I think the Indians have passed on. I think, I don't want to bring up old wounds, but like Michael Wacha. That guy could have been an Indian. But we draft instead Tyler Naquin because I believe we signed him under slot and we were able to spend more. And I just want the record to be out there for people who listen to this. There is far more that goes into an MLB draft than an NBA or NFL combined.
You have no idea. I mean, to sit in that draft room and the dynamics that are at play because of that, and dealing with agents and dealing with kind of the trajectory of the slot allowance and things like that. It's amazing what goes into it, and the preparation that Brad Grant and his team does to gear up for is amazing.
It is. I mean, they've done an outstanding job in your development team.
Yep.
Over the past few years.
The two go hand in hand. You got to pick the right guys, but then you need to develop them.
Yeah, and the Indians have done a phenomenal job drafting and developing players, and we're seeing that from last year's class already. Justice Sheffield, I believe, is an all-star in the minors. Did Zimmer make the all-star team?
He's got to. He's leading every category.
Yeah, I think he is.
He's the guy that I'm just excited to see him in spring training. I mean, the body.
There's a perfect example of a guy who fell.
Yep.
Top 10 talent. Nobody really wanted to pay. I believe we had a bigger allowance last year. So Cleveland was like, he fell to us. Thank you, everybody. We'll sign him. We got a great talent here. And that's the way the draft works. You can't always get the best player because there's so many factors into this. So I just want, at least with Curtis here, I know he's not the best person to talk about with it, but I want at least somebody from the Indians to sort of say, what I'm saying to you guys is not a lie. It's not fabricated stuff. It is real. It is something the Indians really work on. And don't criticize their drafts like you do the Browns, because you don't know what goes into them. I don't even work for these guys, and I at least have an understanding that makes me at least go like, okay, I get it. And I will tell you right now, Chris, I actually was listening to the call-in part of the draft.
Good.
That's how big of a nerd I am. But then again, I did have a horse in the race, my buddy Mike Mancuso. Fortunately, did not get drafted. Mike, go back to Georgia. Whatever you do, go back. I don't care if someone signs you undrafted. You go back, buddy, okay? We'll talk about it another time. I do have another idea for you, but you may not like it. So, but anyways, by the way, I want him on your draft board next year. Mike Mancuso, starting pitcher from Georgia. You can draft him in the 40th round. He'll sign for whatever. I want that to be out there right now. So he's a local kid. He wants to be an Indian. Let's just mark it up right now, unless if he explodes next year. Let's just say we're handing the pick right now. You can blame me later if he doesn't work out. But anyways, it's a 40th round pick. How many 40th round picks actually work out? Not too many. It's not like you're finding Mike Piazza with the 1,000 whatever pick. So, anyways, did you have fun with this?
Absolutely. Appreciate you making the effort to come down. Always good to talk baseball, especially
always
baseball.
We got to do this more often now that I am more independent. I can do a lot more with you guys. And feel free to pass anyone else along the way with the Indians, because definitely we would love to get more Indians talk out there, because, again, I know what happened with the Cavs is heartbreaking, but we're going to get over it. But don't jump on the Browns just yet. I know this is a Browns town, but gosh darn it, there's a lot going on here. So, all right, I am Alex Hill for Curtis Danburg and myself. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Go Tribe. We're going to turn this around. We got this.
Absolutely.
We got this.
Go Tribe.
Yep. All right. For Alex Hill, guess what, guys? I am out of here.